Hey everyone, I found a little extra money in the budget, so now we have title cards. Anyway, it's round 2 and it's Nick versus Aiden. Let's look at some lists. Nick has brought ADP to the tournament. ADP is a very fast deck and its goal is to get a Altered Creation GX attack off the ground as quickly as possible. It can do so through using resources such as Metal Saucer, Energy Switch, and Energy Spinner to get as many energy on board and eventually onto the ADP as quickly as possible. From there, the deck proceeds to try and win as quickly as possible, typically by using Boss's Orders on opposing support Pokemon, knocking them out with attacks like ADP's Ultimate Ray or Zacian V's Brave Blade attack. Nick has chosen to run some interesting tech cards in his list, like the Mew from Unbroken Bonds and 4 Crushing Hammer. 4 Crushing Hammer has been fairly standard in ADP lists for some time. However, it's starting to fall out of favour as the lists tend to run more consistency cards. A well-timed head flip on a Crushing Hammer can be a devastating blow for decks that are slow to set up. The Mew from Unbroken Bonds is an interesting pick. The bench barrier ability prevents any bench Pokemon of Nick's from taking damage. One of the heaviest bench hitting Pokemon in this format right now is the Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. Mew is a space efficient way of preventing bench damage from this Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, as it only requires one slot in the deck, forces the opposing Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX to go through the Mew if it wants to do damage with its Gmax Rapid Flow attack. Nick's opponent is Aiden, who's running Victini and Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. This is the same 60 cards that Zach brought to round 1 against Jacques. However, in this matchup, we may see Victini VMAX finally shine. Although its max victory attack doesn't get boosted damage against ADP, it does receive boosted damage against Zacian V and Crobat V, able to knock them out for 2 energy. While Victini VMAX might not be very effective against ADP, the other attackers in this deck, such as Reshizard and Heatran GX, are both capable of hitting the ADP for substantial damage. We also see the 2-2 Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX line making a return. It's hard to say how effective these Pokemon will be in this matchup, given Nick is playing Mew. However, we may see Galthrust come into play, as 150 damage is enough for a 2-hit knockout on ADP. Aiden's deck does have a vulnerability, however. With the number of support Pokemon it runs, the 3 Dedenne, the Crobat, and the Eldegoss, Nick might be able to make very good use of his Mawile GX, with its Captivating Wink ability able to put these Pokemon on the bench. Not only will Aiden not get to use these Pokemon's abilities, they also become prime targets for Boss's Orders. After an Altered Creation, these GX and V Pokemon will give up 3 prizes. Therefore, Nick will only need to knock out 2 of them in order to win a game. This looms as an interesting matchup. Nick's deck is very fast, but Aiden's deck, with cards like Welder, Giant Hearth, and Victini VMAX, is also very fast. Let's see how it goes. So we have the players setting up for round 2 here. Nick is playing on the left on the Pokemon playmat. Aiden is on the right with the Yu-Gi-Oh playmat. Aiden has a starting Pokemon, so does Nick, so we'll be getting underway very shortly. Nick flips over his ADP, while Aiden flips over Victini V. ADP is an excellent starter in the ADP deck, allows you to get that Altered Creation attack off as soon as possible. However, on turn 1, you really want to see a Zacian V hit the board, as best thing for you to do going first on turn 1 is just see some cards for free with Intrepid Sword. And if any of the cards off the Intrepid Sword are Metal Energy, Nick can attach them to the Zacian V, so you can even begin setting up an attacker for once he's used that Altered Creation. For now though, it's just Metal Energy in his hand. None of the 3 Water Energy in the deck needed for the full effect of Altered Creation. However, Nick plays many ways to find those Water Energy. So we see Nick put down the Chaotic Swell. This is a great stadium against decks that play Giant Hearth, like Aiden's. Chaotic Swell will bump the next stadium put into play, and if Aiden wants to pull off a big play with a Giant Hearth into a Welder, he won't be doing it next turn at the very least. He'll have to bump that Swell somehow. However, Aiden's playing the same cards, same 60 cards as Zach from round 1, so we do know that Marshadow is available to him to bump that stadium. Probably for that very reason, just to get rid of the chaotic swell and make sure your hearth plays go a bit smoothly. So it appears Nick has ended his turn with an Intrepid Sword. He hasn't hit any energy, but it looks like he has a healthy 6-card hand right here, so at the start of next turn he'll be able to play supporter cards and probably dig very deep for that water energy, get the ball rolling, start attacking very soon, and that's the plan with these ADP decks. You want to attack so quickly that your opponent doesn't have any kind of response. Especially if Aiden decides to bench some of his many support Pokemon here. See Aiden playing a communication for that Volcanion. Volcanion's quite useful here. For a 1-prize attacker, going second, able to use that Flare Starter ability to fill his board with energy. Very useful thing to have, especially when Victini's attack is more powerful with more energy attached to it. The Volcanion's also going to be able to set itself up. High Heat Blast hits for 110, however Zacian has weakness to fire, so a High Heat Blast into a Zacian will do 220, which is the magic number. See Aiden Dede changing here. Looks like he'll be quick balling. Aiden has a lot of attackers to choose from here. So he goes with the Reshizard. So the Reshizard has some pretty strong attacks. That Outrage is quite good in this matchup. None of Nick's Pokemon, aside from a Zacian with a Rusted Sword after an Altered Creation, can knock that Reshizard out in one hit, so this could lead to some pretty nasty plays from Aiden's side with Outrage, should Nick swing into the Reshizard but not knock it out. See the Urshifu V come down. We know that Nick is playing the Mew in his deck to shut down the G-Max Rapid Flow plays from Aiden's side. Aiden might not know that just yet. He doesn't have the same information we do. He's going for a Flare Starter. I think we see one of these energy hit the Urshifu here, and maybe some on the Reshizard and possibly one on the Victini. The Urshifu in this matchup also has access to Gale Thrust. 150 damage for one energy attachment can be quite good. It's close to a one-shot on a Zacian, and it's a one-shot on any of Nick's support Pokemon like Dedenne or Crobat. Oh, we see all 4 energy come down on the Reshizard. Aiden might be setting up for a double blaze play in the next turn. If Aiden manages to get 6 energy onto this Reshizard here, he'll be able to swing for 300 damage, which is more than enough to knock out the ADP on Nick's side. However, we see that Big Charm in Nick's deck here, and we see the Mew come down, so he's already putting a stop to that any potential G-Max Rapid Flow plays in the future. But we do see that Big Charm in Nick's deck. If Nick's able to find that, he also shuts off the Double Blaze play, as that card will bring ADP's HP up to 310, taking it just out of range of a fully powered Double Blaze from Aiden. So we see Metal Saucer hit the Zacian on the bench, beginning to power that Pokemon up for a later turn. Obviously, Nick's going to end his turn right here with a GX counter flip, announcing Altered Creation. And he'll effectively be putting Aiden on a timer here. Oh, we do see that big charm, so that shuts off a fairly promising line of play here from Aiden's side. If we're able to knock out that ADP before it starts using Ultimate Ray, you can force your ADP opponent to really dig for those metal sources just to get their Zacians powered up. At this rate, however, it looks like Nick is not going to have any problem using Ultimate Ray on the turn after this. So we see him digging a little bit further. Nick has a pretty clean board here. He's only really got what he needs right now. There's nothing like the Dene or Crobat clogging up the bench. There's just the ADP, about to use Altered Creation, the Zacian, the backup attacker on the bench, and the Mew, who will be stopping the bench damage from G-Max Rapid Flow. But we do see that Crobat and the Zacian come down. Nick is valuing his setup here. He wants to get a little deeper into the deck. Ooh, he draws that Rusted Sword. The one of Rusted Sword in his deck. That's an interesting tech card. We've just seen that GX marker flipped. Altered Creation is online, so Zacian V's Brave Blade attack will now be hitting for 260 damage, but with the Rusted Sword tool card, that damage goes up to 290, which is enough to knock out the Reshizard with one attack. The Reshizard then would be giving up 4 prizes, meaning Nick would only have to knock out any other Pokemon that Aiden plays in order to win game 1 here. Aiden's turn now. He's looking for an attack with the Reshizard here. We see the boss's orders here, so we see a Flare Blitz knocking out the Zacian V, and Aiden will be taking the first 2 prizes of the game. However, action's back on Nick, and he's wasting no time with his turn. Attaching energy, powering up that Ultimate Ray, boss's orders for the Dene, and then Ultimate Ray. So the Ultimate Ray is clean one-shot on that Dene, and so Nick will be taking 3 prizes. Meaning any V or GX Pokemon will be a prime target for a very quick game 1 here. See that Rusted Sword come down on the Zacian. Zacian having 2 energy on it. One of them sort of tucked under the card. There we go. See that clearly now. So that Zacian V can be attacking by next turn. So if Aiden's unable to get this Reshizard out of the active, he could be in quite a lot of trouble here. There's not really a lot of Pokemon he wants in the active. Victini VMAX might have the hit points to avoid a knockout next turn, but you don't really like hitting with that max victory attack into the ADP. And now that he's played Welder, he can't even boss up the Zacian V on the bench to take that out of play. So Nick's in a fairly comfortable position here. He has 2 attackers up and running, ready to go. His opponent's board consists of a Reshizard with no energy on it. A Reshizard with no damage on it, so its outrage attack will only be doing the base 30 damage. It's used its Flare Blitz attack last turn, so it cannot use it again this turn unless it is moved from the active. And if it doesn't move from the active, Nick has game with that Zacian V Brave Blade, boosted by the Rusted Sword and the Altered Creation. So you see the GX marker flipped, and that's going to be game. Nick shows the switch and the Metal Energy. Aiden simply couldn't move that Reshizard out of the active spot. And with that, we have a very quick game 1 on our hands. Nick just showing him the Zacian V with the rusted sword. A lot of damage boosts for a V Pokemon that's already very, very powerful. Not a lot of V Pokemon in this format can say that they can bring down tag team Pokemon with a single attack. At least not without hitting for weakness, but Zacian V is certainly one of the most powerful Pokemon we've seen in a while. Perhaps the most powerful V Pokemon we've seen. And Intrepid Sword ability is very good in a lot of decks. Even decks that aren't attacking with Zacian V sometimes like to have a Zacian in the decks just so it can use its Intrepid Sword ability to let the deck see a few more cards. So we see the players shuffling up for game 2. It's probably in Aiden's interest to go first here. Nick going second can obviously get that Altered Creation attack off on his first turn. However, the combination of cards that it requires is fairly specific and kind of difficult to hit, even if you do have access to your supporter. Aiden going first, however, will have a little bit more breathing space. He'll be able to get Pokemon on board and be able to evolve into them on his first attacking turn.
I think if you want to go that route, and what you'll have to do next format is kind of like what Center Scott does with Volcanion, except you got to
see the players being very thorough there, getting their decks shuffled up. First game didn't take very long, so they have the time to be a little more deliberate with their actions here, and I'm sure we'll see game 2 beginning shortly. I think Nick is mulliganing here. No basic Pokemon in his hand. So Aiden will welcome the extra card he gets to see off his opponent's mulligan. Welder decks like to see extra cards. Decks with as much fire energy as Welder decks have, chances of hitting one off your mulligan or hitting a card like Giant Hearth that can get you into your Welder, quite good. This will allow Aiden to get a bit of a quicker start. Okay, second time's the charm. Will Nick get the basic Pokemon he needs to start the game? Certainly runs enough basic Pokemon. You wouldn't be surprised if you saw one mulligan with the deck, but even decks like Eternatus that run 15 basic Pokemon, you'll still see a mulligan every now and then. And I think Nick has a basic Pokemon in his hand. I did see the Dedenne in his hand. His other starter is obviously a little bit better than that Dedenne. And once again, it's that ADP. Aiden's starter is Mewtwo and Mew GX, the tech attacker in this matchup. Mewtwo is useful because it's a versatile card, and it lets you use the attacks of all your GX Pokemon in play. Aiden's GX Pokemon in this list, however, are Heatran and Reshizard. These are both pretty good attackers. However, Mewtwo being Psychic type doesn't really add or subtract from Aiden's position here. You want Mewtwo because it's a Psychic type attacker, and this lets you hit things like opposing Mewtwo's and Urshifu VMAXs for weakness. You wouldn't, ordinarily in this matchup, you wouldn't bench Mewtwo, but if you just happen to have Mewtwo because you started it, it's not terrible. It's still functionally as powerful as Reshizard and Heatran. Especially as Nick's deck doesn't play Power Plant or any way to shut off Mewtwo's abilities. Mewtwo, however, is in that 270 hit point range, meaning that a Brave Blade from Zacian won't be able to knock it out after an Altered Creation or a Rusted Sword, but both AC and Rusted Sword will get at the knockout as we saw in Game 1. So Aiden making quick work of those GX Pokemon in his deck, putting them in his discard pile. Feels like he'll be focusing on this Mewtwo as his main attacker for the time being. Aiden is moving through his deck pretty quickly. He's Pokemon Communication that Crobat, taking the Crobat, effectively just taking one card out of his hand so that Night Asset ability draws a few more cards. So we see some Fire Energy, and we see a Welder, so Faden gets to keep this hand. He's looking at a pretty nice turn 2. Actions on Nick now. It's an interesting hand. He's got a Quick Ball by the looks of things. He's got supporter cards. And he has Dene. So it looks like neither player is too upset with their start here. Nick quick balling for that Zacian right away. The odds are low that Nick will be getting to use Altered Creation this turn, so having access to Intrepid Sword, especially against a deck like Aiden's that doesn't run disruption cards, that allows you to see more of your cards and makes your odds a good bit better that Altered Creation will be your attack for your second turn. Aiden will have to, Nick will have to throw away some pretty good cards here if he wants to keep this hand going. Looks like he will have to throw away Boss's Orders and Switch. You don't really want to see these cards too early in the game. Switch might have some uses if you start the wrong thing, but Nick would really like to have not seen that until later in the game. We do see some nice cards in Nick's hand here. He's dropping these tool cards on his Pokemon, attaching the Metal Energy to the ADP, and he's proactively benching the Mew here, sort of stopping the G-Max Rapid Flow play before Aiden has even benched an Urshifu V in this matchup. So we see the Welder for 1 here on Aiden's turn. See that Giant Hearth coming down. Giant Hearth will be able to search through Aiden's deck for 2 Fire Energy. Still hasn't used his attachment for turn yet, so Aiden can put that Fire Energy on the Mewtwo and get a Double Blaze GX going. Or perhaps even a Heatran Steaming Stomp if he doesn't wish to use his GX attack just yet. As long as he gets damage on that ADP, it'll be a valuable turn for him. And I think we are seeing that Double Blaze. We see the damage, the GX counter flipped over, and 2 100 dice put on that ADP. So that ADP has taken 200 damage, and if it stays in the active and uses Altered Creation, it's probably going to get knocked out. So Aiden making a fast start with his cards here, trying to get that damage on board.
Why you gonna hurt me like this?
See the energy spinner. So altered creation will be happening this turn.
Okay, yeah, okay, good. I always play, as soon as I picked up the deck, like my first start, I was like, people have 2 of this, huh? I did play 2. That seems wrong, especially when people hammer things all the time.
But with the Mewtwo opposing in the active, the Mewtwo as it is able to knock it out with a steaming stomp. 130 damage would do the job right here. Nick might not be too worried, however, as he does have that Zacian on the bench with 2 energy. 3 now with that Metal Saucer to it, so even if this ADP goes down, he has an attacker ready to go already. See the Mawile? Mawile doesn't yield him any results, it just shows that Aiden has a pretty nice hand. He has the Welder for next turn. He has Boss for a later turn. Ooh, we see that. See, one of the 2 Crushing Hammers hit, which is about what you'd expect. Couldn't really complain if you were the Crushing Hammer player or the Crushing Hammer recipient. Aiden throws away the Rapid Strike energy in order to use his Giant Hearth. Seems like Aiden is abandoning the Mew line of play. Pardon, the Rapid Strike Urshifu line of play, given that Mew is in play. A little ahead of myself there. So we see the Welder dropping 2 energy onto that Mewtwo and Mew. See 1 energy come down on the Victini VMAX. And I believe he's announcing Steaming Stomp there. Can announce Flare Strike, but you aren't able to use Flare Strike next turn, and given how much HP the Zacian has, you might want to use Flare Strike. We see a Marnie from Nick. Nick wanting to refresh his hand with 5 new cards. Wants to get another attacker set up, as I don't think this Zacian will be sticking around very long, as it has to swing into a Mewtwo and Mew that it won't be knocking out. And if not the Mewtwo, there's a Victini VMAX on deck with 1 energy. Aiden could very easily get another energy on that, and that max victory attack would be doing enormous amounts of damage. Nick's played his hand down, and he appears to be only left with a energy switch. Not a particularly useful card in this situation right here. Can't move it in. Ooh. Ooh. Now this is a smart play. He's going to use the Psy Power attack. Mew's Psy Power attack is going to put 10 damage on this Mewtwo Mew, and it appears 20 on the Victini VMAX. So Nick is setting that Mewtwo Mew up for a knockout next turn. That Zacian V Brave Blade will be hitting for 260, which is exactly enough to knock out the Mewtwo and Mew. This also keeps his main and really only attacker safe, as Aiden would need a boss's orders in order to chase down that Zacian V. We do see that boss's orders though, so Nick's play, while very smart, really didn't help him, as Aiden had the cards he needed anyway. Nick top decks a quick ball, and as the only card in his hand, it won't be able to get him anywhere in this matchup. Aiden would quite easily be able to take the 6th prize on his next turn. So it looks like we're going to a game 3. So that was an interesting play from Nick there. Very smart of him to recognise the I guess the off damage that the psi power would have led him to. We did see the rusted sword in his prize cards, so unless he managed to draw that from his prizes, that was never an option. But if you don't have rusted sword, you still have psi power. Certainly not what you think of when you think of ADP decks, your next attack being a psi power. However, Nick appears to be quite experienced with the deck and recognises that plays on the table for him if he wants it. So we see the players shuffling up, getting ready for game 3. Nick will get to choose whether to go first or second, and I believe he'll be choosing to go first here. In this matchup so far, each of the players that have gone first has won their game. Pokemon trading card game can be a little bit like that. The player who chooses to go first or second can be favoured depending on their deck. And in ADP's instance, getting a energy on your ADP and an Intrepid Sword off, it's more than enough to convince you to going first. So both players have an active Pokemon to start this game. Nick's hand looked quite nice. We saw the quick ball, we saw the water energy, so Nick will have very good chance of getting that altered creation off for his second turn. Especially as we see that quick ball and the metal energy top deck. Metal energy, one of those cards that you're pretty happy to throw away, as Metal Saucer is able to recover those for you and power up your attackers. So there we see the ADP hit the board. We will very likely be seeing the water energy come down this turn, followed up by an Intrepid Sword. Aiden has started the Heatran GX here. Probably not your preferred starter. However, Steaming Stomp for 130 can knock out a Zacian V. Obviously with that switch in hand, Nick is not going to allow a Welder into a Steaming Stomp for a very early turn 1 knockout. So we see that switch protecting that Zacian V from damage. See the Rusted Sword come down to the Zacian and the Metal Saucer, so productive first turn from Nick here. See that Intrepid Sword? No hits, but we do see a Quick Ball and a Big Charm for next turn. That Quick Ball will be able to get Nick into cards like Dedenne or Crobat if he wants, in order to see more of his deck. While the Big Charm will bring ADP up to 310 HP, making Aiden's job of taking it out just that little bit more difficult. You see a Crobat for 1 from Aiden. His hand must not be great if that's the line of play he's choosing. See a Giant Hearth here. Giant Hearth for 2 energy. Not sure if Aiden has a Welder in hand. Might have liked to see the Welder play happen before the Crobat one. So we do, we see the Welder come down onto the Heatran. And it doesn't look like we see any more fire energy, so Aiden throws away a very big hand here in order to try and see a fire energy. I think he's missed it. I think he's missed fire energy. He's thrown away a lot of resources here to miss a turn 1 attack. His option, he does have an option though, he might have to hot burn for 100. It's an ugly way to get around, but that 100 damage might be the difference between being able to knock out the ADP next turn or not. However, it doesn't seem like Aiden really has a way to hit 210 just off a welder. So he's in a very unfortunate position here. He just passes. So for all those cards he threw away, he didn't get much out of it. It's very unfortunate.
Why is it so hard to draw one energy?
For a deck running 9 fire energy,
We need to up the count.
he's really missed it here. It's very unlucky. Nick wastes no time getting that metal energy and the big charm onto the ADP. The ADP now has 310 HP with no damage on it.
I probably shouldn't have batted for one, but I found a welder up.
Aiden's bench consists of Crobat V and Dene GX, two Pokemon you really don't want to have him play against an ADP deck. Nick might have a very simple path to victory here after this turn.
Well, I mean, if I hit the third energy, doing 130 there, and then the next turn is hot burn.
But also seeing me start ADP Zacian energy
It's terrifying, right?
I do see a boss's orders hit the discard pile from Aiden, however. Nick. Pardon me. See that Crobat for 5. And we just see the GX marker flipped. So Nick is in a brilliant position right here. He's got the ADP one turn away from attacking, while the Zacian on his bench has an energy on it, and after a metal sorcerer or two will be also ready to join in on the attacking. Aiden, however, has been drawing dead. Aiden's play here might just be to take out that Zacian V, at least protect the Heatran for another turn. In order to do that though, he'd have to find his way into a boss's orders. Aiden does have outs though. He has at least 2 more Dene GX in that deck there. He also has an Eldegoss, so if a boss is one of those 8 or so cards he discarded last turn, he'll have access to it through that as well.
I don't know why I have character. Sorry. As soon as I did, I was like, next I grab the
So we see a Cherish Ball.
That's right.
Deck was shuffled a little unnecessarily there, but we've all done that. Can be nice to save a little time and just play all your search cards one after another and just go back into the deck each time. Or it's good to be thorough, especially when you're on camera. So the Dene GX's bench, that Dede changeability will give Aiden some fresh cards here. He attaches to the Heatran here, recognises his mistake, and we do see that boss's orders for the Zacian. So, and the Steaming Salt will do 260 damage and knock it out. Nick knows what he wants in his active, doesn't even move the ADP here. So we see Metal Energy and Boss in Nick's hand. So Nick is already halfway to the finish line after playing just a few cards on his turn here. The ADP is still undamaged. And it appears Nick has chosen to bench another ADP. It's difficult to tell with that glare. However, ADP is not susceptible to a Heatran attack or a Victini VMAX attack. So this is a clever play from Nick, recognizing that all he really needs to do is get another knockout on Dedenne GX, and if he has some big tag team Pokemon to sponge hits for a few turns, he can sort of take his time getting to that boss's orders. You do see the Victini VMAX come down here. Not sure how I feel about that. The max victory attack only doing 100 damage to any of Nick's Pokemon here. However, it will hit that Crobat for the full 220. So that might be what Aiden is eyeing up here, just another attacker so you can hit the Crobat. Oh, it appears Aiden has gone for the Hot Burn GX on that Crobat. So now, Victini doesn't have any sort of viable targets with that max victory attack. See, 2 hammers again from Nick on his turn. Hitting one, missing one. Pretty fair. The Palpad is shuffling 2 bosses' orders back in the deck, so Nick will be on the hunt for those cards as soon as possible. However, Aiden's now down to 2 prizes. A game where it looks like he hasn't really been able to get much of anything together. He's not doing too bad, and if Nick just happens to bench something like a Dedenne or a Crobat, well, he won't be able to bench Crobat, given that the Crobat was previously knocked out, but something like a Dedenne could take a knockout fairly easily and give Aiden the game here. It feels like, however, even Dedenne might be able to tank hits. He does have that Dedenne in hand to dig for that boss's orders, and if he does find it, the game's over right here and now. But Dedenne, with its 160 hit points, is able to tank any hit that Aiden will be able to deliver next turn. Even with a Welder and 3 energy, I think Steaming Stomp will be Aiden's best option here. So Dedenne the tank is sitting on the bench. It misses the boss's orders, however. Looks like Nick will have to wait at least another turn in order to find that boss for game. He has the 2 Cherish Balls in hand, wanting to thin that deck out for the next turn. See the Mawile and the Dedenne in the deck, so Dedenne will be ready for next turn, and the Mawile might find him something nice to put on the bench, although everything Nick needs to have on Aiden's bench is already there, just those 2 Dedennes. And it looks like he's gone for the Ultimate Ray here into the Heatran. And Heatran now has 10 hit points remaining. Nick being careful with his energy placements here, just putting 2 energy on the Pokemon. He has to be a little careful about a energy burst from Victini here. He slapped too many energy on that ADP. An energy burst would be able to get the knockout on something. However, nothing short of 7 energy on an ADP will do it, so Nick very safe to just thin that deck out and improve his odds of winning next turn. The Cherish Balls for the Dedenne and the Mawile. Ordinarily, you'd probably wait until next turn to play those. I think Nick realizes that Aiden doesn't have any hand disruption in this deck, and it's safe to just grab them whenever he wants. So you see that 10 on the HP number on the Heatran, indicating that it has 10 hit points remaining. These guys do have access to dice that go up to 180 though, so the numbers on these dice got bigger, and people still like to put the small numbers on the corner. See Aiden thinking over what to do on his turn here. Can't afford to leave that Heatran in the active. If he doesn't find a switch, he'll have to pay his heavy 3 retreat cost. He might be more than happy to not attack with it again for the rest of this game, however. See that Reshizard in Aiden's hand here? But we see him put it back. Now, I might have liked to see him put 1 energy on that Reshizard, getting it ready for an unlikely Giant Hearth into Welder play, getting that set up with 4 energy for next turn. I think what he might want to do this turn is attack with that Victini VMAX. Obviously, all this hinges on Nick not getting into boss next turn. However, a max victory for 100 doesn't seem like a lot, but that could be followed up with a Flare Strike for 230, which would get the knockout on an ADP. Nick, however, has a lot of recourse against this. He can simply retreat the ADP, attacking with the other one that's already charged up. And of course, there are 2 boss's orders sitting in that deck, possibly a 3rd. Nick's deck looks pretty small, and his odds of hitting with that Victini are quite favourable. We see the retreat into the Victini VMAX. However, we don't see any other energy hit the board, so it looks like we're just seeing an attack for a 100 here.
Like, 100 doesn't make me win next turn?
I think what Aiden's eyeing up here is a Gale Thrust into the Victini the next turn. He does have that boss, and he does have the Pokemon communication for that VMAX. So if Nick doesn't find what he needs this turn, Aiden gets a shot and would have a very real shot of just winning the game. So all these Spreading Flames move energy just to give Aiden's Pokemon a bit of mobility there. Snuff out the possibility of any kind of escape rope play, perhaps. And Nick's going through his deck. It looks to only be about 12 to 15 cards. He's already getting to thin a card with the Quick Ball. He's also played the Energy Spinner, but it looks like that Energy Spinner has missed, given that there are no energy left in his deck. And that isn't really surprising considering how full Nick's board is of energy. All 3 water energy from the deck are in play right now. And he has about 6 metal energy on board. 16. Nick giving that a good shuffle, wants the deck to be as random as possible, doesn't want to know where those bosses are, just knows he wants to draw into them.
I know, it's like, I hate shuffling small hands, especially when that happens. It's for the game, and you're like, you're trying to
The
make a fair
players
shuffle.
building up the drama, they know they're on camera,
Probably just got a power shuffle, right?
they want this to take as long as possible, want me to fill that dead air however I can.
Please don't. Please don't.
Both players shuffling the deck several times now.
Please flip the place up. Unless you feel like you
And we see one final cut, is it? Yep, that's the final cut of the deck. And we see the dead air change, and there's the boss for the game. So Nick Potter is the winner of round 2 with his ADP deck. He'll be moving to a 2-0 record.
GoPro, stop recording.
I'll see you guys for round 3.
GoPro, send nudes.
GoPro, stop recording.